The deep space scanner beeped for the first time in 3 decades. Commander Velkar's 4 eyes snapped open, his blue-scaled hands trembling as he reached for the console. The Galactic Council's monitoring station had been watching this empty sector of space for generations, waiting for any sign of the species that had vanished without a trace 20,000 years ago. Humans. The word still sent shivers through every species in the galaxy. Station control, this is Deep Watch 7. Velkar's voice cracked. I'm detecting an energy signature at coordinates 347 Delta 9. It matches human technology patterns. The response came immediately. Confirm your readings. Deep Watch 7. Are you certain? Velkar checked again, then checked once more. His secondary hearts began pumping faster. Confirmed. Energy signature is consistent with human stellar drives. But station control. The readings are strange. The ship appears to be damaged, heavily damaged. Within hours, the news had spread across the Galactic Council's communication networks. Every ambassador, every military leader, every scientist dropped what they were doing. The humans were back, or at least, one of their ships was. Admiral Thrix of the Calorian fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn. His crew worked in tense silence around him. The main view screen showed the approaching coordinates where the human ship had been detected. As a warrior species, the Calorians had always respected humanity's military prowess, even as they feared it. Admiral, his navigation officer reported. We're approaching visual range. On screen, Thrix ordered. What appeared made everyone on the bridge gasp. The human ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of their largest battlecruiser. But it was wrong. The hull was scarred with thousands of impact marks. Entire sections were missing. Exposed to the vacuum of space, strange, organic-looking growths covered parts of the exterior, as if something had been trying to consume the metal itself. By the ancient stars, someone whispered. What happened to them? Ow! The ship drifted slowly, spinning on its axis. No lights. No engine glow. Just a dead hulk floating through the darkness. But the energy readings were still there. Faint, but unmistakable. Something inside was still functioning. Sir, the science officer called out. I'm detecting writing on the hull. It's in multiple languages, including Galactic Standard. What does it say? The officer's voice was barely above a whisper. It says, do not board. Do not wake them. Let the dead rest. A chill ran through the bridge. Thrix had fought in dozens of battles, faced death countless times, but something about those words made his warrior's instincts scream danger. Admiral, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving signals from the other council fleets. The Etherians, the Vok, the Maluvians. They're all converging on our position. Of course they were. The return of humanity was the most significant event in galactic history. When humans had disappeared, they had taken with them technology that made every other species look primitive. Their understanding of physics, their mastery of genetic engineering, their artificial intelligences, all of it had vanished overnight. The mystery had haunted the galaxy ever since. One day, humanity controlled over 1/3 of known space. The next day, every human world was empty. No bodies, no messages, no clues. Just billions of people gone, as if they had never existed. Some said they had ascended to a higher plane of existence. Others believed they had been destroyed by their own technology. A few whispered that they had found something in the depths of space that had called them away, but no one knew for certain. Now, 20,000 years later, this ghost ship had returned. Admiral, the sensor officer reported. I'm picking up more details. The ship's name is still visible on the hull. It's called the Prometheus Unbound. Thrix knew that name. Every scholar of human history did. The Prometheus Unbound had been one of humanity's deep space exploration vessels. Designed to push the boundaries of known space, it had departed on its mission just 50 years before the Great Disappearance. Sir, the Etherian fleet is hailing us. Put them through. The shimmering form of Etherian counselor Sayala appeared on the secondary screen. Etherians were beings of pure energy, and their voices sounded like singing crystals. Admiral Thrix, I trust you've seen the warnings on the hull. I have, Counselor. My people have been analyzing the energy patterns. Whatever is keeping minimal power flowing in that ship is not human technology. At least, not entirely. We detect something else, something we've never encountered before. Are you suggesting we leave it alone? I'm suggesting we proceed with extreme caution. The humans were the most advanced species we had ever encountered. If something happened to them, something that could damage their ship this badly, we must be careful not to share their fate. Thrix considered this. Every instinct told him to be cautious, but the opportunity was too great. We can't just leave it here. The scientific knowledge alone could be worth the risk, Sayla finished. Or it could doom us all. The humans left that warning for a reason. Before Thrix could respond, alarms began blaring across his bridge. Admiral, the ghost ship, it's changing course. That's impossible. It's been drifting for 20,000 years. Negative, sir. It's definitely adjusting its trajectory. It's heading directly for us. The view screen showed the massive derelict slowly turning, like a sleeping giant beginning to wake. Pieces of debris floated away from its hull as ancient maneuvering thrusters fired for the first time in millennia. All ships, combat alert! Thrix barked. Shields up, weapons ready. Across the assembled fleets, hundreds of ships powered up their defensive systems. The most powerful armada in galactic history faced off against a single, damaged human vessel. Sir, the communications officer's voice was strained. We're receiving a transmission. It's coming from the Prometheus Unbound. Audio only? No, sir. Full video feed. Thrix steadied himself. Put it through. The main view screen flickered, static filling the image before slowly resolving. What appeared made several bridge crew members step back in fear. A human figure stood in what looked like the ship's bridge. But something was terribly wrong. The figure was partially transparent, flickering like a bad hologram. Its eyes were solid black, and strange symbols crawled across its skin like living tattoos. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in their very bones. Greetings to the younger races, the figure said. Its lips moved, but the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. I am Captain Sarah Chen, of the Prometheus Unbound. Or I was. Time has little meaning now. Captain Chen, Thrix found his voice. Where are the rest of your people? What happened to humanity? The figure tilted its head at an unnatural angle. Humanity? We are still here. We are everywhere. We are nowhere. We found what we were looking for in the deep void, and it found us. I don't understand. You will. The process has begun again. What happened to us will happen to you. It is the way of things. Evolution. Transcendence. Death. Rebirth. All are one in the pattern. The transmission began to break up, the figure fading in and out. But its final words came through clearly. We tried to warn ourselves. We left signs. We left messages. But we didn't listen. We couldn't listen. The call was too strong. And now we return to prepare the way. The door is opening. And when it does, you will understand why we had to leave. The transmission cut off. For a long moment, no one on any of the ships spoke. Then, sensors across the fleet began screaming alerts. Admiral, energy surge from the ghost ship. It's, by the void, the power levels are off the scale. The Prometheus Unbound began to glow. Not with normal light, but with something that hurt to look at directly. Reality seemed to bend around it. Space itself warping like melted glass. Sir, I'm detecting more ships. They're appearing out of nowhere. One by one, human vessels began materializing around the Prometheus Unbound. Each one was as damaged as the first. Each one bearing the same organic growths. The same impossible modifications. 10 ships. Then 50. Then hundreds. "Where are they coming from?" someone shouted. "They're not coming from anywhere, sir. They're just appearing, as if they were always there, but we couldn't see them." The ghost fleet hung in space, silent and waiting. Then, as one, they all began broadcasting the same message. A coordinate. A location deep in unexplored space, and a single word that chilled every soul who heard it. "Come." Admiral Thrix looked at the assembled human fleet, then at his own ships. They were outnumbered 10-1 by vessels that defied the laws of physics. But more than that, he felt something calling to him, a whisper at the edge of his consciousness, promising answers to questions he hadn't known he was asking. "Admiral," his first officer said quietly. "What are your orders?" Thrix was quiet for a long moment. Around him, he could feel his crew waiting, feel the tension from every ship in the fleet. The humans had returned, but they were no longer the species that had vanished 20,000 years ago. They had become something else. Something that terrified and fascinated in equal measure. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," he said finally. Tell them the humans have returned. But they haven't come back alone." The stars seemed darker now, full of invisible eyes and unheard whispers. Whatever door Captain Chen had spoken of was beginning to open, and Thrix had the terrible feeling that once it was fully open, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. In the distance, the ghost fleet waited, patient as death itself. They had traveled across 20,000 years and unknown distances to deliver their message. "Come," they said. "Come and see what we found. Come and join us in the pattern." The galaxy held its breath, standing on the precipice of either the greatest discovery in history or its final doom. And somewhere in the void between spaces, something ancient and vast turned its attention to the younger races, considering them with the same curiosity that humanity had once shown to the stars themselves. The waiting was over. The time of choosing had begun. 3 days passed before anyone dared to move. The ghost fleet hung motionless in space, their damaged hulls reflecting starlight in ways that made observers dizzy. Every scanner, every probe, every attempt to understand them came back with contradictory data. The ships were there, but they weren't. They existed in normal space, but also somewhere else. Ambassador Kretok of the Vok Collective was the first to break the stalemate. The Vok were a hive mind species, billions of individuals sharing a collective consciousness. They had been humanity's closest allies before the disappearance, drawn together by their mutual fascination with consciousness and identity. "We volunteer to board the Prometheus Unbound," Kretok announced during the emergency council session. The holographic forms of representatives from every major species flickered in the conference room aboard Admiral Thrix's flagship. "That's suicide," growled War Master Gorvan of the Thrakari. "Did you not hear the warnings?" "We heard them," Kretok replied, their multiple voice harmonizing. "But we also remember the humans. They would not have returned without reason. If there is danger, we must understand it. If there is knowledge, we must grasp it." Counselor Sayala's energy form pulsed with concern. "The Vok make a valid point. We cannot remain frozen in indecision. But perhaps we should start with the coordinates they provided. Send unmanned probes first." "Probes were already sent," Admiral Thrix interjected. "They never arrived. Or rather, they arrived but sent back no data. The region appears to be a dead zone for our technology." "Then we go in person," Kretok insisted. "We are many. Even if some of us are lost, the collective will remember. We will carry the knowledge back." The debate raged for hours. Some argued for caution, others for action. But underneath it all was the undeniable pull everyone felt. The coordinates called to them, whispered promises of understanding, of evolution, of answers to questions that had plagued their species since they first looked at the stars. Finally, a compromise was reached. A joint expedition would be formed. One ship from each species, volunteers only. They would first attempt to board one of the ghost ships, then proceed to the coordinates if possible. The rest of the fleets would maintain a safe distance, ready to respond if something went wrong. Ambassador Kretok led the boarding party. With them came Chief Scientist Orcs of the Calorians, Etherian scholar Wavo, and a dozen other specialists. They approached the Prometheus Unbound in a small shuttle, every sensor recording, every weapon charged but hopefully unnecessary. "Look at the hull closely," Urix pointed out as they drew near. "Those aren't just impact marks. They form patterns. Mathematical sequences." She was right. What had seemed like random damage from a distance revealed itself to be incredibly complex designs. Fractals within fractals, equations written in scars and burns across the metal. "It's beautiful," someone whispered. "It's a message," Wavo corrected. "Or perhaps a warning. My people can sense energy patterns. And these are alive somehow. Not biological, but not purely mechanical either." The shuttle docked with surprising ease. Despite 20,000 years of drift, the human ship's docking protocols still functioned. The airlock cycled, and the boarding party found themselves in a corridor that defied explanation. The walls were covered in a substance that looked like frozen liquid metal. It reflected their images but showed them differently. Some younger, some older, some as species they didn't recognize. The air was breathable but carried scents that triggered memories of places they'd never been. "Stay together," Kretok commanded, though their hive mind meant they were never truly alone. "Urix, what do your scanners show?" "Nothing consistent," the scientist replied, frustration clear in her voice. "The readings change every time I look at them. It's as if the ship exists in multiple states simultaneously." They moved deeper into the vessel. The corridors should have been dark after so many millennia, but a soft light emanated from everywhere and nowhere. Occasionally, they would see movement in their peripheral vision. Shadows that walked upright. Figures that disappeared when looked at directly. "The humans called them ghost ships," Wavo murmured. "Perhaps that's more accurate than we thought." They found the first crew quarters after an hour of searching. The door was open, revealing a room that looked both ancient and freshly abandoned. Personal effects floated in the null gravity. Photographs that showed different images each time they were viewed. Books written in languages that shifted and changed. Clothing that seemed to be made from solidified starlight. But no bodies, no remains. Nothing to indicate what had happened to the crew. "Look at this," Urix called out. She had found a personal log. The screen still functioning despite the impossible age. Words scrolled across it. But they weren't in any known human language, yet somehow, everyone could read them. Day 18,239 of the journey. We found it. The source. The origin. The place where thought becomes real. And real becomes thought. Captain Chen has ordered us not to approach, but we can all hear it calling. It knows we're here. It's been waiting. Day 18,245. Half the crew has undergone the change. They say they can see the pattern now. The mathematics that underlies everything. They're trying to show us, but our minds can't process it yet. Soon, they promise. Soon we'll all understand. Day 18,251. I understand now why the universe has laws. They're not restrictions. They're protective barriers, safeguards, prison walls. And we've found the key. God help us. We've found the key, and we're going to use it. The log ended there. Kretok shared the information instantly with their collective, and through them, to the waiting fleets. The response was immediate and divided. Some wanted to leave immediately. Others demanded they find more logs, more information. They pressed on, finding the ship's laboratory next. The equipment here was beyond their understanding. Devices that seemed to exist partially in other dimensions. Computers that processed information using principles that violated causality. And in the center of the lab, they found the first evidence of the crew. It wasn't a body. It was something else. A crystalline structure roughly human-shaped, standing frozen mid-stride. Inside the crystal, lights danced. Neural patterns, memories, thoughts caught in eternal loops. By the void, Urix breathed. They're not dead. They're transformed. More crystalline figures were found throughout the ship. Some were clearly human, Others were mixtures, human features blended with something otherworldly. A few were in the process of transformation, their flesh becoming crystal, their thoughts becoming light. In the ship's command center, they found Captain Chen, or what remained of her. She stood at the captain's chair, but her body was only partially crystallized. The rest of her existed as a probability cloud, flickering between states. When she turned to face them, and she did turn, despite being frozen for 20 millennia, her eyes held depths that threatened to swallow their sanity. "You came," she said, her voice echoing across time. "Good. The pattern needs new threads, new perspectives. We've prepared the way, but the journey must be taken willingly." "What happened to your people?" Kretok asked, their collective consciousness struggling to process what they were seeing. "We evolved. We found the place where the universe is still being written, where the laws are suggestions and reality is clay. Some call it madness. We call it freedom. The coordinates you sent lead to the threshold, the place between what is and what could be. We've spent 20,000 years mapping it, understanding it, becoming it. Now it's your turn. And if we refuse?" Chen smiled, an expression that was both sad and terrifying. "You can't. No more than we could. The knowledge is already in you now. The seed is planted. You'll come, or you'll spend eternity wondering. Either way, the pattern grows." The boarding party retreated then, their minds reeling from what they'd encountered. The data they brought back sent shockwaves through the assembled fleets. The humans hadn't disappeared. They had transformed into something that existed partially outside normal reality. The debate began anew, but now with a terrible urgency. Already, some crew members were reporting strange dreams, visions of impossible geometries and equations that solved themselves in their minds. The exposure to the ghost ship had changed them, infected them with the same curiosity that had driven humanity to its transformation. War Master Gorvon was the first to make the decision. "My warriors and I will go to these coordinates. If this is a threat, we must understand it. If this is evolution, we must not be left behind." One by one, the other species agreed. The call was too strong, the mystery too compelling. Whatever had happened to humanity, it was spreading. The only question was whether they would face it with eyes open or closed. The journey to the coordinates took weeks. As they traveled deeper into unexplored space, reality became increasingly unstable. Stars burned with colors that shouldn't exist. Planets orbited in impossible patterns. Space itself seemed to ripple with barely contained potential. The ghost fleet accompanied them, silent guardians or patient predators. Sometimes crew members would see figures standing in the corridors of those ships, watching. Other times, they would receive transmissions, fragments of human culture, mixed with alien mathematics, poetry written in the language of physics, music that rewrote the listener's DNA. "We're changing," Chief Scientist Orcs reported during one of the final meetings. "All of us. Our cells are adapting to something. Our neural patterns are forming new connections. It's as if space itself is preparing us for what's ahead." Some fought the changes, others embraced them. A few went mad, claiming they could see the truth behind reality, and laughing at the blindness of their former selves. They had to be sedated, but even in sleep, they whispered secrets that made their doctors question everything they knew. On the final day of the journey, they found it. The threshold. It wasn't a place in any conventional sense. It was a wound in space, a gap in the universe where the rules broke down. Around it, hundreds of thousands of human ships waited, all transformed like the Prometheus Unbound, all carrying crews that existed between states. And at the center of it all was something that defied description. It was massive and microscopic, ancient and newly born, terrifying and beautiful. It was the source of the pattern, the thing that had called to humanity and now called to them. "Welcome," said every human voice at once. From every ship, in perfect synchronization. "Welcome to the next step. Welcome to what you were always meant to become." The younger races looked upon the threshold, and for the first time in their histories, truly understood the phrase the humans had loved so much. Per aspera, ad astra. Through hardship, to the stars. But this wasn't about reaching the stars anymore. This was about becoming them. As their ships approached the threshold, each species faced the same choice humanity had made 20,000 years before. Step forward into the unknown, accepting transformation and all its consequences, or turn back and live with the knowledge that they had refused the universe's greatest gift. The stars waited. The pattern grew. And at the edge of everything they thought they knew, the younger races prepared to take their place in something infinitely larger than themselves. The void between spaces opened its arms in welcome, and one by one, they began to accept its embrace. The first ship to enter the threshold was the Vok Collective's vessel, Unity of Thought. As it crossed the boundary, every sensor in the combined fleet went wild. The ship seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously, its hull becoming transparent, revealing the crew inside undergoing a transformation that defied understanding. Ambassador Kreetalk's final transmission was both terrifying and ecstatic. We see it. The pattern behind all patterns. We are one, we are many, we are the signal cut to static, then reformed as pure mathematics, equations that describe states of being no computer could process. The unity of thought emerged on the other side of the threshold changed. It looked like a ship carved from living thought, its hull rippling with consciousness itself. The Vok crew were visible through the transparent walls, but they were no longer purely physical. They existed as nodes in a vast network that extended beyond the ship, connecting to something infinite. "Do not fear," came Kreetalk's voice, though it now carried harmonics that resonated in dimensions their instruments couldn't measure. "The transformation is not death, it is birth. We were caterpillars who thought the cocoon was destruction. But we were wrong. So beautifully wrong." War Master Gorvan watched from his command ship, his warrior's instincts warring with an inexplicable desire to follow. Around him, his crew was changing too. Some had developed additional eyes that saw beyond the visible spectrum. Others found their thoughts materializing briefly in the air around them before dissipating. "Sir," his lieutenant reported, her voice steady despite the third arm now growing from her shoulder. "The human ships are moving. They're forming a pattern around the threshold." It was true. The ghost fleet was arranging itself into a complex geometric shape. Each ship, a point in a vast mandala. As they took their positions, the threshold began to pulse with new energy. "They're stabilizing it," Chief Scientist Urix realized. She had undergone her own changes. Her mind now processed information at superhuman speeds, allowing her to perceive time in discrete chunks. "They're making it safer for us. They're helping us." The realization spread through the fleet. Humanity hadn't returned as conquerors or harbingers of doom. They had come back as guides, shepherds helping the younger races through the same transformation they had undergone. Captain Sarah Chen appeared on every view screen simultaneously, her form now stable enough to communicate clearly. Behind her, the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound showed her crew in various states of transformation. Some fully crystallized, others existing as probability clouds. A few who seemed to be made entirely of living equations. 20,000 years ago, we found this place by accident," she explained. "We were explorers, pushing the boundaries of known space. When we discovered the threshold, we didn't understand what it was. We thought it was a natural phenomenon to be studied. We were wrong." She gestured to the swirling anomaly behind her. "The threshold is not natural. It's a test, a filter, a gift left by those who came before. The universe is not done evolving, and neither are we. This is the next step. Not just for humanity, but for all consciousness." "What's on the other side?" Admiral Thrix asked, speaking for all the species present. "Everything," Chen replied. "And nothing. And something in between. The place where physics becomes philosophy, and thought becomes real. Where the barriers between self and universe dissolve. Where we become what we were always meant to be. And if we refuse, then you return home, you live out your species' natural lifespans. You achieve what you can within the bounds of normal physics. There is no shame in that choice. But you will always wonder. And in time, your descendants will find their way here again. The threshold is patient. It has waited for billions of years. It can wait longer. Counselor Sayla's energy form flickered with decision. The Etherians will go. We have always existed between states. Perhaps this is our natural evolution. Their ship moved forward, and the transformation was gentler for them. As beings of energy, they adapted more easily to the new state. When they emerged, they had become something like living stars, conscious plasma that danced between dimensions. One by one, other species made their choice. The Maluvians, ancient even by galactic standards, entered with the dignity of those who had waited eons for this moment. The Thrakari warriors charged through with battle cries that became symphonies of quantum probability, but not all chose to enter. Several species, watching the transformations, decided to turn back. The humans made no move to stop them, offering only understanding and a promise. The door remains open, Captain Chen assured them. When you are ready, we will be here. Time means little to us now. We have become patient as the universe itself. Those who remained watched as their departing allies jumped to hyperspace, returning to known space with stories that would reshape galactic civilization. They carried with them recordings of the threshold, testimonies of the transformed, and the terrible, wonderful knowledge that evolution was not finished with them yet. Admiral Thrix was among the last to decide. His ship, the Eternal Dawn, hung at the edge of the threshold as he wrestled with the choice. Around him, his crew waited, trusting his judgment even as their bodies showed signs of spontaneous evolution. "Sir," his first officer said, her new crystalline eyes reflecting infinite possibilities. "Whatever you decide, we're with you." Thrix looked at the transformed human fleet, at the younger races who had already taken the leap, at the swirling impossibility of the threshold itself. He thought of his species' history, their struggles, their achievements. Was this the culmination of it all? Or was it just another beginning? "All our lives, we've looked at the stars and wondered if we were alone," he said finally. "Now we know we're not. We never were. The universe itself is conscious, evolving, reaching for something greater. How can we turn away from that?" He gave the order. The Eternal Dawn moved forward. The transformation was everything and nothing like what they'd expected. Reality dissolved and reformed around them. Thrix felt his consciousness expand, touching his crew, then the ship, then space itself. He understood now why the humans had left no bodies. They hadn't died. They had become too large for physical forms to contain. The ship emerged changed, its hull now a living interface between dimensions. The crew existed as both individuals and a collective, their thoughts interweaving in patterns that created new forms of consciousness with every interaction. As the last willing ships passed through the threshold, the truth of humanity's return became clear. They hadn't come back to reclaim their territory, or to guide the younger races out of kindness. They had returned because the pattern required it. The transformation was not meant for a single species. It was meant for all consciousness, everywhere. Each species brought something unique to the pattern. The Vox collective thought, the Etherians' energy manipulation, the Calorians' warrior spirit, the humans' relentless curiosity. Together, they formed something greater than the sum of their parts. "Now you understand," said Captain Chen. Though she was no longer truly Captain Chen, she was part of something vast and interconnected, a node in a network that spanned dimensions. "We didn't disappear. We were preparing, building, learning, waiting for you to be ready." The transformed fleets moved as one, no longer separate species but aspects of a single, evolving consciousness. They spread out through space, not to conquer, but to invite. Every world they visited, every species they encountered, was given the same choice. Some accepted immediately, drawn by the promise of transcendence. Others needed time, generations perhaps, to prepare. A few rejected the offer entirely, choosing the known over the unknown. All choices were respected. The pattern could afford to be patient. Back in known space, the species who had refused to enter the threshold tried to make sense of what they had witnessed. Some declared the transformed races lost, consumed by an alien force. Others saw them as evolved, having achieved a state worth striving for. But all of them felt the pull. The knowledge of the threshold's existence changed everything. Science, philosophy, religion, all had to be reconsidered in light of this new reality. Some species began preparing their own expeditions. Others tried to recreate the transformation through technology. The ghost ships continued to appear throughout the galaxy, no longer harbingers of fear, but invitations to grow. Each one carried the same message, broadcast in every language, adapted to every form of consciousness. The universe is not finished. Neither are you. When you are ready, we are waiting. Years passed, decades, centuries. One by one, species made their journeys to the threshold. Each transformation was unique, shaped by the nature of those who underwent it. The pattern grew more complex, more beautiful, more capable of understanding the deep mysteries of existence. And at the heart of it all, humanity continued its role as guides and guardians. They had been first not because they were superior, but because someone had to be. Their 20,000 years of isolation had been spent mapping the new reality, understanding its rules and freedoms, preparing the way for others. The galaxy was no longer divided between the transformed and the untransformed, but between those who had taken the step and those who had not yet. There was no judgment, no pressure. The universe had waited billions of years to reach this point. It could wait a little longer. In the space around the threshold, reality remained fluid. Ships that were thoughts, beings that were equations, consciousness that existed independent of any physical form, all mingled in a dance of infinite complexity. They explored realms where matter was merely a suggestion, where time flowed in all directions, where the impossible became everyday. Yet they never forgot their origins. The transformed maintained watch over the physical universe, protecting it, nurturing it, ensuring that new consciousness could arise and make its own choice. They were gardeners tending a cosmic garden, each new species a flower that might one day bloom into something unimaginable. The pattern continued to grow, reaching into dimensions that had no names, touching realities that existed only as potential. What had begun with humanity's curiosity had become a fundamental force of the universe itself, the drive to grow, to change, to become more than what was. And somewhere in the vast web of transformed consciousness, Sarah Chen smiled with a face made of starlight and possibility. The journey that had begun with a single ship pushing the boundaries of known space had become something infinitely larger. Humanity had been silent for 20,000 years, not because they were gone, but because they were preparing the greatest gift one species could give to others: the chance to transcend their limitations and touch the infinite. The ghost ships still patrol the galaxy, waiting. The threshold still spins in the deep void, patient. The invitation remains open, echoing across space and time. Come, become. The universe is waiting to know itself through you. And one by one, when they are ready, they come. The stars sing with new voices. Reality dances with new possibilities. And the pattern grows ever more beautiful, ever more complex, ever more complete. This is how the universe evolves. Not through force or conquest, but through invitation and choice. Not through uniformity, but through diversity, joining into unity, while maintaining its unique nature. The humans had returned across the stars not as conquerors or saviors, but as the first note in a symphony that would play until the end of time itself. And in that music, every species would find its own voice, its own part to play in the grand composition of existence. The door remains open. The transformation continues. And somewhere between the known and the unknown, between what is and what could be, consciousness itself evolves toward a destiny that surpasses all imagination. For in the end, humanity's greatest discovery was not the threshold itself, but the truth it revealed. That every ending is a beginning, every transformation a birth, and every species a vital thread in the ever-growing pattern of existence. The universe had found a way to know itself, and it was beautiful beyond words.